Hey everybody, it's Eric, the investigative millennial, and as you can see, I have a guest here. Today we're talking about pretty much one of the most, if not the most important topics in all of Christianity, the resurrection. And I've got Nick Peters here, and in any case, I'll let him do a bit of an introduction because, again, I think you guys, if you like my content, you definitely would like his. So Nick, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I know you had some pages you'd like to tell us about, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Nick Peters, and I do affirmative virgin birth, in case anyone's wondering. And
Yes.
you can find me at deeperwatersapologetics.com. First off, that's my apologetics blog. I've been doing apologetics for about 25 years now. And I've recently started a Substack as well, Gaming Theologian. Find me there. It's where I look at Christianity and video games together. My Deeper Waters has a Patreon. My Gaming Theologian has a subscription. Please do consider those. Everything you donate, I guarantee you, it will go to help support a needy seminary student, namely myself. I'm currently at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. I just finished a master's in philosophy. I'm working on a PhD in the area. My dissertation idea now is video games and Christianity, and that we play games. They appeal to us because man has a God-given need for story, quest, and purpose. I am also on the autism spectrum, extremely high functioning, and I live with my cat Shivo, who's sleeping on my bed right now, and I'm sure he sends everyone his hate out there.
Yes. Okay, well, definitely, and thank you. And I'm a cat lover too, so that definitely helps. So I have two cats, and they're a bonded pair. They're tabbies. So, but yes, and for those who don't know, I also have a growing channel that I devoted to them, sharing videos of them as well. So you can check that out. I'll leave it in the description, along with all of Nick's information regarding his blog. In fact, he does a lot of book reviews, uh, and they're definitely very interesting. But today, we're going to be going over the resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and of course, Nick, I know you agree with this too, because again, the resurrection is probably the most important topic that we could ever talk about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but of course, again, I was going to ask you whether you affirmed the virgin birth or not, but you already answered the question. But for those who don't regularly read your blog, I guess I'll just explain the in joke there for a bit.
Yeah, I was dialoguing on Facebook a few years ago with a friend of mine. We were engaging with some atheists on there, and we were saying, well, Jesus, the Apostle Paul affirmed the virgin birth, which I do affirm. How come he never mentioned it? And we were trying to explain that the Gospels are written in the style of situational letters. They weren't meant to give us anything about the life of Jesus, per se. They're not biographies. They're meant to answer questions that the church was dealing with at the time. And
Right.
so the details of the life of Jesus wouldn't come up. Those would be background knowledge for the listeners, for readers at the time. And I said, hey, we attend evangelical churches every Sunday, and our pastors don't come out every Sunday and say, hey, I affirm the virgin birth. And so, in order to show the joke about it, we started saying that in every single post. And well, for me, a good joke can just never die. And that dialogue was probably about 10 years or so ago, and I've still kept it going.
Hey, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's what I say. So basically, so yeah, no. But in any case, I did get some questions. We'll go over some of the basics that I know many people will ask, but also just some of them. Uh, but we'll also answer some more advanced and scholarly objections, and then from there, I'll just shut up and let Nick talk, because again, he's a good person to talk about this. So so in any case, I guess this is probably one of the most common lay objections I've ever heard, which is why I'd like your answer to it. How do we answer skeptics who try and say, "Well, the Bible doesn't count as evidence for Jesus," or I've heard it said, especially with a lot of virulent internet atheists, try to say, "Well, the Bible isn't the evidence; it's the claim." So, uh, I guess what do you think about that, and how
This
would you
would
respond?
not apply to any other ancient document out
Mm,
there, and it's quite serious that the Bible interests us. The Bible contains numerous claims. Yes, the thing is, we can investigate those
mhm.
claims. We can do the exact same thing with the Quran to some extent. We can do it with the Hadiths. We can do it with the Book of Mormon. We can do it with Polycarp. We can do it with Plutarch. We can do it with most any other ancient writing that we want to. What we do is we look and say, okay, what's the claim? What are the reasons for backing the claim? No New Testament scholar I know of, even a skeptical one, takes this kind of approach.
Mm,
Part of it seems it's approaching as if the Bible is an all or nothing game, which is usually the way I find many atheists and sadly many Christians like to take it. Either everything in there is completely true or everything in there is completely false. And it
yeah,
just doesn't work to do that way. Don't treat any other text I know of that way.
yeah, yeah, and definitely, I think, because I've definitely encountered this claim, and I think a lot of people try to treat the Bible as though it's an abstract philosophical concept when it's a document and it's a report. Well, some parts of the biographies are meant to be in that way. Uh, which, I mean, if you want to try and argue, well, we can't trust this report because of X, Y, and Z, fine. But to say that like it's circular reasoning, that just we you're right. We don't treat any other document that
Mm-hmm.
way. And also, I think a lot of people kind of forget that the Bible is multiple documents. So it's more like
Yep.
multiple documents rather than just one.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what people essentially are saying without knowing it is, well, yeah, we have these documents, but we can't trust multiple documents that say that talk about something, and that to me just doesn't work or
Mm-hmm.
line
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and different things are subjected to different claims. I mean, how would you test, for instance, the Psalms for historical accuracy? I mean, with some things in there, you can make a test as to when the Psalm was written or something like that, but it's not in the same genre as something like the Gospels.
Right.
I just, I'm just now putting finishing touches on a research paper on Ecclesiastes. You can write about the date of Ecclesiastes, who wrote it, the influences on it, but to historically test in some other ways, like you would say the Exodus account, that doesn't really make sense.
Right. Yeah. No. That does line up, and I definitely, again, a lot of people, and sadly many Christians, don't even take into consideration that the Bible has different genres of
Mm-hmm.
literature.
Yep.
And like you said earlier, I mean, the epistles are situational letters, whereas the Gospels are more biography, along with the Book of Acts, or the Book of Acts would more be history, I guess. Or would
Yeah,
I guess?
Acts is definitely a history.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, a lot of skeptics try and treat it that way, and not even skeptical scholars, as you know, would treat it
Yep.
that way. But of course, another thing that many skeptics try and counter is, they say, well, if we accept the Bible as evidence, can't other religions do the same thing, or that sort of thing? So I guess what would you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they can, and we'll investigate them the same way.
Okay, okay, and would you say that I mean, you don't have to go into super whole lot of detail here, but the thing is, like, have any other religious texts, like, what has typically been the case when we've analyzed, like, say, some other type of uh, religion or
Yeah,
things of
what
that
I
nature?
was thinking mainly was something like, say, the Quran. And in many
Right,
cases, there's not much historic or information in there you can verify out. There's a lot of that information really comes in the biographies of Muhammad, but a lot of the Quran really consists largely of doctrine and retelling of biblical stories. Now, the Book of Mormon is something quite different, that it does claim to tell a history, what
right,
happened mainly in the Americas after, after the conquest started of Jerusalem, and unfortunately, archaeology hasn't been very kind to the Book of Mormon.
yeah, I've definitely, but yeah, no, I think so it's more like, I guess, in the case of the Quran, it's kind of just like you kind of either believe it or you don't. Like, it's just there's nothing to, like, necessarily flat contradict it. It's just there's nothing to go
Yeah.
on. And
Mm.
with the Book of Mormon, I think you. So basically, if I'm getting it right, there's basically, in some cases, positive disproof against the claims. In
Yeah.
addition to, okay, in addition to no
Yeah.
positive evidence.
And before anyone asks in comments or anything like that, yes, I've read both of those books.
Yes, yes. Many atheists tend to think that Christians just don't read anything
In
else.
fact, I'll go further, and I'd encourage Christians to read those books as well. Be familiar with what's going on in the world around you. Know the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you stand a much better chance, I think, at evangelizing if you actually show interest in what somebody else believes. I think, in that case, and you won't look like a fool if you actually know what you're talking about. But in any case, all right. And of course, there's another thing that, of course, is ubiquitous in the atheist community. Basically, don't extraordinary claims like miracles require extraordinary evidence or something?
Yep, agree. Uh, who gets to count, first off, who gets to count what is an extraordinary claim and what isn't? I think a lot of claims I hear from atheists about, say, a multiverse or something like that seem extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have evidence, then I'll go with it. All claims require sufficient evidence.
Right.
That's it. And if you set one group apart and say, well, I'm going to make this one the harder one to approve, and the reason is just it disagrees with what I already think, then you can keep raising that bar however much you want.
Mm-hmm.
I think Craig Keener has done the most work in demonstrating miracles today of his massive 2-volume Miracles, and with his work Miracles Today. Now, when I encounter atheists on Facebook or places like that, I usually always ask one opening question. When was the last time you read a book along these lines that you disagreed with? And it is amazing how rarely I get an answer to that question. It's like they refuse to read something that disagrees with them. And then I'll say, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I want to send you Andrew Loke's book on the resurrection of Jesus, published by Rutledge. It is 100% free on Kindle. So you
Wow.
do not have to spend a penny to get this book. I say, send you this book. Just read it and we can discuss it. So far, I have had 0 atheists agree to read that book. None. And
Wow.
I'll be just clear. Christians that are arguing these issues and they are not reading things that disagree with them, they need to stop doing that as well. Christians need to be reading the other side as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if for nothing else, just to for their own confidence, because again, I will get into some of the more evidences for the resurrection, because I think it can, if properly done, can definitely boost somebody's confidence in that. But also, just for the record, I do have Craig Keener's 2-volume set as well, so it's quite an extensive read. But honestly, I think also it definitely, if nothing else, demonstrates that you can't just start from the presupposition of, well, miracles are just extraordinary because they don't happen. Like, that's not something we can just go into really anything with just saying, well, that's just dumb. That we just don't believe that, and not if you're going to be like even remotely trying to be objective in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, and the funny thing is, there's a lot of places in the world where, if you tell them, hey guys, miracles happen, they're like, yeah, we know, like, well, welcome to planet Earth. Like, it's kind of, there are many claims of that, and especially in India, I think, in a lot of times, and there can be miracles from other religions, sure, but
Yeah.
at the very least, it definitely opens up that there is more than just, the the non-miraculous world or anything. So, but anyway, um, but yeah, we can definitely get into miracles more later. But with the other thing, and this is kind of along the other lines, but I'll just ask it real quick. Can we trust the authors even with their biases? Because again, the more sophisticated, well, I won't say more scholarly, but a lot of people will just say, well, they're biased, and the gospel authors and Christians, so how can we trust them?
Again, how would this work if we applied it in every other field? For instance, I'm not going to read Richard Dawkins on evolution. Biased. I'm not going to read Bart Ehrman on the New Testament because he's biased.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care really if someone is biased. What I care about is how are they presenting the data? What argument are they being? If anything, bias could in some cases make them say, I want to be even more sure I'm presenting my claim accurately. Am I going to say, I'm not going to go to that Holocaust museum because it's ran by Jewish people and they would be biased in that area? If anything, they'd have probably a much bigger drive to make sure that things get done correctly. N.T. Wright once said, the scorekeeper of a game might be biased, but he will at least tell you what the score of the game is.
Yeah.
So, again, bias is usually thrown out as an excuse to avoid dealing with data. And there's a simple way to deal with this problem. Read both sides on the issue and then decide.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. And again, bias kind of seems like a bit of a lazy argument in many cases. But anyway, now I guess, is there any other objections that you think may be like kind of non-scholarly that you think are maybe worth mentioning, that so many people just, that you see maybe on places like Facebook?
No one should take Jesus Mythicism seriously.
Oh, yes. And for those who don't know, Jesus Mythicism is the idea that there wasn't a historical Jesus at all. And which, as opposed to somebody like Bart Ehrman, who doesn't believe that Jesus is the Son of God, but would believe that he was like a historical figure, like an ordinary person. So, but yeah, I read somewhere, and maybe you can tell me whether this is true or not, but that there are more scientists who affirm creationism than there are scholars who affirm Jesus Mythicism in the history department, or is
that wouldn't surprise me too much, but that's not my area. But
okay?
by scholars' myths, since we talk about scholars who affirm Jesus Mythicism, I mean scholars in the field. I'm in the field of philosophy. I don't care if someone in philosophy field says, well, Jesus never existed, unless they've got a PhD in New Testament also, or she'll get serious study done in New Testament. I'm talking about people who are New Testament scholars. They don't say Jesus never existed. They must agree Jesus existed. It's not even a live debate at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely. In fact, there's actually been several skeptical scholars. I wish I tried to find it in time for our debate, but I couldn't find it. But there was a few scholars who had some not too kind words to say about Richard Carrier, who were themselves like more skeptical scholars, who were New Testament scholars who were skeptical. And Richard Carrier, of course, for those who don't know, is a popular Jesus mythicist. So yeah, but yeah, so you got Jesus. Nobody should take Jesus mythicism seriously. Is there anything? Is there any others?
Nothing really comes to mind too much. Common questions that you see. I guess we're going to be getting.
Okay, no problem. So, first, I guess would be one of the more advanced objections. Is there any like extra biblical corroborative evidence? If not, why may not there be? So how can we verify, or is there anything else like other documents that verify it?
Where we can know outside of the Bible that really no one doubted the existence of Jesus. That wasn't using as a counter theory. None of that, but even someone like Celsus, Origen wrote against most, said that Jesus did miracles by ideas he learned from the Egyptians. He learned magic from them. They weren't even disputing that he did miracles.
Right.
In that case. Tertullian spoke about Jesus being crucified under Pontius Pilate, and then that a mischievous superstition arose after that. The thing that we have to remember is a lot of people get this idea of, say, well, why wasn't everyone talking about Jesus? He was such a great figure. And my response from you, I'm not surprised that so few people wrote about Jesus outside of the Gospels and Scripture. I'm surprised anyone wrote about him at all. Because for us, Jesus is the most monumental figure of all, but in the ancient world, it hadn't reached that point yet. Jesus was to them seen as a nobody. He never traveled. Aside from his sojourn as an infant, he never traveled outside of his homeland. He never wrote a book, never ran for office. He didn't build a school of any kind. He wasn't a military figure, and he died by crucifixion. None of those would be worth talking about. And you say, where he had claims of doing miracles. Yes, that's exactly what the Roman historians would say. Claims. That's it. They wouldn't take it seriously. I use a parallel. Say, imagine a scenario where, say, 100 years from now, all of America turns Mormon. We are the first Mormon country. And a historian decides, I want to go back and see what people said about Joseph Smith at the time of his life before he discovered the Mormon plates.
Right.
They're not going to find as much. They're not going to find people saying, oh, Joseph Smith was the most awesome person of all. They'll find quite the opposite, actually.
Yeah.
But at a future time, if this happened, everyone would be thinking Joseph Smith was like the greatest person who ever lived.
Right.
And then they look back like, well, people didn't think that then. In a similar way, Jesus, today we see him as a monumental, extraordinary figure, but in the ancient world, no, he was just seen as some rabble-rouser who came from a backwater area of the world, and no one should pay attention to him because he died by crucifixion, which is not worth talking about.
Right, and of course, crucified victims. I mean, it's seen on churches now, but I mean, back then it was pretty much the worst thing that could happen to somebody. It was viewed that way, and also people in general just didn't want to talk about it, especially since it was so shameful, right?
Yeah, it was for Bruno of the ancient world.
Ah, I see, I see, and plus, also, I think we and I think a lot of people also may not consider that first. A lot of people didn't know how to read and write back then.
Right.
Correct? Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, there wouldn't have been nearly as many people to actually be able to do it. And isn't it also true that in many cases, much of ancient literature hasn't been preserved because there weren't enough people to copy it?
Yeah, first, what I have to remember is that event happens, someone has to write down the event, that writing has to last long enough to be recopied.
Right.
And then those copies have to last long enough to reach down to us. We've lost a lot from the ancient world.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I mean, in general, of course, writing was much harder back then too, right? Because
yeah. I'm wanting to read a book soon called The Gutenberg Galaxy. I haven't got around to it yet. But the idea is that when Gutenberg came, he changed the way we think about everything.
Oh.
So today people can say, well, geez, if this was so important, why didn't they just write it down immediately? Why do we think that way? Because we've lived in a literary culture.
Right.
Where writing is the main thing. Now we're moving into, instead, a digital culture. So you can imagine 100 years from now, people will hear about events in World War II, and the younger ones will ask, well, what were they saying about it on the internet? Because that's going to be the way they naturally think about things.
True.
And so what's going on is that in the ancient world, they were an oral culture.
Right.
And news spread best by word of mouth in communities. So, you live in the time of Jesus, you're wanting to get the message out about who he is and what he's done. You have two ways you can do it. One is free, it's quick, easily done, and can reach anyone who can speak the language.
Right.
The other is extremely costly. I mean, I read a book about a decade ago saying just writing a letter like Galatians would have cost $500 at the time. Who knows how much it costs now? It's extremely slow. Whereas writing, you have to get the ink, the query, everything. You have to get all the materials together, and it will only reach people who can read or hear the story being read. Now, which one of those are you going to go with? You're going to go with the oral communication for the most part. Eventually, it was written down because they did want a record of it, but oral communication just worked a whole lot better back then. And we need to stop putting our bias of Gutenberg onto the ancient world.
No, definitely, and that's a good point. And that's if you didn't make a mistake in your writing, too.
Right.
Can you I mean, I imagine there were people who made a mistake and they might have had to either skip something or start all over in some cases, and that would have...
And this is also a benefit when it comes to the New Testament, because we have more documents of the New Testament closer to the time than we do any of our ancient texts at all. I mean, if you can't trust the text of the New Testament handed down in the sense that's at least generally reliable, you really can't trust any of our ancient documents.
Yeah, definitely. But of course, I'd imagine few people question other ancient sources in that way, or their reliability, or at least not compared to how many people question the New Testament.
Now, if the New Testament didn't have the miraculous, strong claims that it had, it would be accepted as the most reliable ancient document we have.
Fair enough, definitely. And I guess also there was, I guess, talking more about in this oral culture, because there's a lot of discussion about memory and how, and I guess we'll get into some of the dating of the Gospels in a minute, but can we trust the memories of the authors when it's possible the documents were written maybe decades or at least years after that?
We all carry these things with us today.
Yes, I have mine here.
They're great, they're helpful to have, and they're memory killers. Most of us do not know the phone numbers that we dial every day. In the ancient world, you didn't have this going on. You didn't have post-it notes, you didn't have saved files, nothing. You had to go by memory, and so what a shock. They have better memories than we do.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just individual memories, though. These stories were told in communities. So you had the memory of a community. When someone's telling a story, they might be able to change a few minor secondary details. When it came to the major details, it'd be, whoa, slow down. You are not getting that one right. Make sure you go back and get that one correct. So that's why you can see differences in secondary details, but the major details stay largely the same. And so again, this is just us pushing our biases onto the ancient world, where we say, those people must have been just like us.
Yeah.
They weren't.
Yeah, not even close in some cases. But yeah, no, and also, I'd imagine, because again, they have to use their memory a lot to already memorize like portions of the scriptures and.
Oh yeah. It wouldn't have surprised me if a lot of Jewish elite at Jesus' time could have had the whole Old Testament memorized. I don't remember it right now. There's a name even for Muslims who have the Quran memorized. There are blind Muslims who have the entire Quran memorized. And in the ancient world, there were people known as rhapsodes who would go around reciting the writings of Homer, quoting them. That way, people had far better memories back then.
Yeah, and it's not even because we are inherently different, it's just because of in many cases, our circumstances, right? Because like if we didn't have these and actually used it, we'd probably have better memories, right?
We probably would.
Definitely, yeah. And I think also, and I heard this from J. Warner Wallace, that not all memories are created equally.
No.
In many cases, like there are plenty of things I remember that happened years ago, very vividly, that were important. But something that happened maybe a month ago that I could care less about, I'm not going to.
Yeah, like if I asked you, say, what did you have for breakfast a year ago, you probably wouldn't remember that.
Nope.
But if I asked someone like, when was your wedding date, or what did you do the night you graduated from college, or what was it like when your first child was born, they'll remember that. I mean, many people my age, we remember, say, 9/11 when that took place.
Yeah, and in fact, I even remember I was in 3rd grade at the time, I think, and it was because I live in northern New Jersey, actually, and I specifically remember, like, the teachers took us out, like, I think on the playground and like we saw like smoke, because I live in very northern New Jersey. So yeah, no, I can remember that, and that was easily over 2 decades ago. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's exactly right. But but yeah, no, and also, I guess should Christians, because another nearly ubiquitous thing that I hear about is well about the Bible in general, but the New Testament in particular. They're like, well, there's contradictions, and should Christians be worried about them, or what would you say about that?
No.
Okay,
I'm guessing you probably want a little bit more than that.
I'm sorry.
I'm guessing you probably want a little bit more than that. Hey, we have contradictory stories about how Hannibal crossed the Alps to attack Rome.
Right.
No one doubts that he did that. At least no one I know of does. But we have different stories saying how he did that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that if we hinge everything on inerrancy,
Right.
we make scripture an all or nothing game. And it's just not wise to do that. I want them to explain to me the data that everyone agrees about with the historical Jesus and go from there. Now, we can talk about contradictions if someone wants to, but I usually say that for Christians who are, for instance, struggling with some doubt issues and just want an answer to that question, that their faith doesn't particularly hinge on that one.
Right.
But
And
for skeptics, I'll say, okay, that's interesting. Let's talk about Jesus.
yeah, no, and again, this may surprise you, but I agree that inerrancy is definitely, it's almost idolized in a lot of ways, I would say. So, but yeah, no, I think, and while again, it's definitely fine to talk about contradictions. In fact, on my channel, I've actually done like dozens of videos answering contradictions in under 60 seconds on my channel. So there's definitely, I mean, I first of all would definitely dispute the fact that there are, but even if there were, again, it's not like my faith would crumble. And I'm sure, again, contradictions, they certainly aren't the death blow that atheists and particular skeptics make them out to be.
Right.
And let's see here. I think there was also, and what are, I guess, and I'll sort of just give you the form because this is sort of the last question I have written down. But what are some of the strongest points in favor of trusting the New Testament on the resurrection specifically? But of course, you can apply it to the rest of the New Testament if you want to.
Did you say on trusting the New Testament?
Yes, trusting.
I think it's just all the information we have on the historical Jesus that is universally accepted. He died by crucifixion. Largely accepted he was buried in a tomb. The tomb was found empty. And the disciples were convinced that they had experiences of the risen Jesus. Now, notice I'm not saying they saw the risen Jesus. I'm saying they had experiences that they said, hey, Jesus appeared to me.
Right.
And I think also you just look, the life of Jesus is so unique and difficult to explain. Why is this man so important to us all, even 2,000 years later? And then I tie that in with any of the metaphysical arguments I give for the existence of God.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, I find that Christianity comes out very well in that regard. And once again, I just encourage people to read both sides of the issues. And see what you have to say upon reading both sides.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that, again, specifically the resurrection, what helped for me, I think, is the fact that, like, I know a popular argument is they were grieving and they hallucinated things or something, and that to me has never been that convincing, because I mean, it's one thing to do it like alone one time, but like they had 40 days with him, and he was in multiple groups many times over the course of it, and then like the ascension and everything afterwards. So that'd be hard to explain with hallucinations, and combined with the empty tomb, I mean, hallucinations can't explain that. I mean, they would have just said, "Hey guys, the tomb, it's still here. You're in your heads or something." I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's a lot more that we can read on the resurrection. There's been tons of books and everything else written on it. I know there's, in fact, I think I actually own Defending the Resurrection, and it's by a person who you were associated with, J.P. Holding, and it's quite extensive. Like in like it answers like every single freaking like objection imaginable. So yeah, it can definitely be brought together. But yeah, no, that's something that's definitely helped me a lot. And but yeah, the resurrection is definitely important, and because again, Paul said that if the resurrection didn't happen, then our faith is in vain. So we might as well just go home if it didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So is there anything other than this, like on the resurrection, that maybe you'd want to talk about as well, like specifically, like whether it's evidence or theological significance or anything of that nature?
Not on this. Just encourage people to go out, read both sides,
Mm-hmm.
be open. I usually say atheists tend to honor reason with their lips, but strong their heads are far from it. If you consider yourself someone who is open-minded and reasonable, what do you have to lose by reading both sides?
Mm-hmm.
I lose my time. So do I, because I read both sides as well. I just walk away being more informed about what I'm arguing against.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't like Christians arguing against science who don't study the sciences, and I don't like that either,
Yeah,
then be consistent.
right. Yeah. I mean, again, and look, if we really were, I mean, since so many atheists consider themselves sort of anti-theists in many ways, and they want to constantly argue against it, well, okay, fine. Then if you're really right, then you should beat us, no problem.
Yep.
Not that I think that will happen, but again, there's nothing to lose. And like you said, there's a free Kindle book. You said it was Andrew Locke's book, I think it was?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, no.
Andrew Locke.
Oh, Andrew Locke. Sorry. But yeah, no. There's definitely a lot that can be said about the resurrection. We definitely aren't going to be able to cover all of it, but I would definitely enjoy again hearing more from Nick. And I thank you so much for your time here. It's definitely been informative and awesome. And Nick, you said you were doing a PhD dissertation on video games and Christianity, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So maybe we'll schedule another interview on that another time, maybe after Easter, whenever it's convenient.
Yeah, and I'd like to remind everyone, please check out my website, deeperwatersapologetics.com, and become a Patreon there. It's such a great help to me. And then follow me at Substack. You can become a subscriber there as well. And again, that's a huge help to me.
Totally. And I'll put all of that in the description as well. But yeah, Nick, you can just send me the links to that, or I think you might have sent them to me already. But either way, I'll put them in the description of the video in that case. But thank you so much, and everybody just like and subscribe to this channel as well, because there will be plenty of more content here, and follow Nick as well, because again, he's incredibly informative. He's helped me a lot, and God bless. Thank you.
Thanks.